Hi everyone, my name is Johan and welcome to Fire Biscuit Gaming. This is the channel where I share programming tips and game programming tips in particular. If you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe. So today I want to share about how to use a scriptable object in Unity to power your game magic system with cards, monsters and magic effects. If you don't know what scriptable objects are, I will give a link to a bunch of videos in the description. And the basic idea is you can create data containers in your resource folder that you can load in your game to power the behavior and the content of your game. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to use the project I'm working on now, which is based on the Mage Knight board game. I will give a link in the description as well. But the general idea is you have monsters that you need to fight. So here I have 2 goblins, right? So this is prototype UI, don't worry too much about it, right? But I have 2 goblins here. I have a hand of cards with 2 types of effect of cards that I can play. Let's just play one. Choose an effect. Here I want to get some attack. Pay for my attack. So some mana. Activate the effect. And now I can apply the effect on the group of enemies. And you can see below the 2 enemies are dead. And I didn't take any wound. So how do I create these cards and the effects associated with them entirely in the Unity project without code? So obviously you have to create the code to define all the behaviors of all your effects. But once you define the template for all of those, you can use the Unity inspector and editor to create more effects, more cards entirely without code. So the first thing I want to do here is go into the card folder and I want to create an action card. So I will create a new folder. Let's call it demo card. Okay. And now, if you are familiar with scriptable objects, you will know that in code you can define in the header a menu item to create that new object. So here it's an action card, so create card action, right? And let's call it demo card demo. Okay. And if you look at the code, this is what does it, right? Create asset menu here allows me to define card action item and this will create a new file name. Okay. Now going back to Unity, my card has a bunch of properties that I can dynamically, well not exactly dynamically, but I can configure entirely in the editor. Okay. So here how many instances of that card are available. I can give it a name, let's call it demo. I can choose an artwork, let's pick a random one. Okay. I can choose effects like basic, advanced, tapped or thrown effect. And you can see that this takes an effect combination. So an effect combination is an AND or an OR, like how many effects I can group together and whether the user has to pick one or they can get all of the effects. So let's just go and create an effect combination. So create effect combination. So combo basic. So that would be defining the list of basic effects that this card can support. And you can see the combination itself can have a cost. So just now was the mana cost I had to pay to activate my siege attack. And then you can be an AND or an OR. So this is simply an enum. And I can define a list of effects that this combo would give the user access to. So let's do that. Let's create an effect. So we see all the effects I can define here. So all these have been defined by me in code and then made them accessible via menu items. And then configurable using serialized fields in the Visual Studio. So let's just create an effect that gives attack to the player. So effect game attack, let's just say 5. Okay, the name does not matter. And you can see at the top here, I have a nice description of what this effect does. And it says I need to select the element of the attack, like ice, fire, or physical attack. And then the value here is 0. So I can choose the element. So elements themselves are scriptable objects. So I can choose ice, fire, and I could create more like thunder or dark or poison and stuff like this. So let's just say ice attack. And then I can choose whether it's a basic, range, or let's just say siege is the most powerful one. And then give a value of 5. There are a bunch of other properties, but we won't have time to go into it today. But now I have gain, siege, ice, attack 5 as a description of my effect. Let's add this to my combo, right? So one of the effects, so it has 1 now. So I can pick from only 1, right? So it's not super exciting, but let's just demonstrate, okay? And then I just link my basic combo to my basic effects. And then I just restart the game. And of course, I forget to add the card to the player's hand because everything is not dynamic. So if I go to my player, choose the hand, just remove the other cards from just now. Let's just add one. So I choose my card called demo and I generate a UID for it. That's the way I can save and restore state. And then I start the game. So now I have a card in my player's hand when it starts the game. You can see my demo card is right here. And when I activate it, I can choose only from basic effects. And I get my Ice Attack 5. All right, cool. Now let's see other stuff that I can do. So we have seen how to create a card. Let's see how we can add effects to it. So we've added again Attack 5 effect. How can I add more effects to it? And more advanced effects. So in this case, let's create a new effect and let's call it gain mana. Alright. So effect gain, let's say I want to gain a red crystal. So every time the effect is triggered, the user will gain a red crystal. So going back to the inspector, I can see I can choose a cost, I can choose the color. This is not the mana color that I will gain, this is the color of the card. It's some special property. I have to choose the color. So here I want to choose red. And as you can see, even the colors in this game are all data from scriptable objects. So I can really add different kinds of mana if I want to. And I can choose, I want a crystal, okay? And that would be too easy for the user to just get a red crystal for free. So let's add a cost to that effect. So I can create an effect of that cost. And let's say it costs a wound every time you get a red crystal. So wound. And how many wounds? Let's just say one wound only, okay? So I can go to my gain red crystal effect, drag in the cost in my effect cost slot, right? There could be side effect if I wanted to. But you can see I gain a red crystal and it costs me one wound. I add the effect to my basic effect combo and I just start the game. Now it takes a little bit of time, but you can see my card is here, and when I drag it, I can choose between my normal attack 5 or I can get a red crystal by getting a wound. So let's just select this, activate, and you can see I got a wound and I got a red crystal. Exactly what I wanted. And then you can also undo what you just did, and now my wound is gone and my crystal is gone too. Alright, so I've showed you how to define effects and cards using the Unity inspector. Now let's look at how it works in code and how these things are wired up to get an idea, right? I won't go into too much details because it's a lot of things to cover. But if you look at what an effect looks like in the inspector again, you have the base data, which represents my base effect data scriptable object class, and side effects, as well as the actual value that represents that gain mana effect data up here. The value has the mana color and the form the mana will take when it's given to the player. So here it's a red crystal. So first at the mana colors folder, you can see I have defined all the colors available in the game: black, blue, gold, green, red, and white. And these are all scriptable objects themselves that give me data about the various images to use, as well as some colors and additional properties like how many I can hold in my inventory. So I could configure this entirely in the inspector. Now if I go back to the effect, right, look at Visual Studio. So the mana color is implemented using a straight up scriptable object class where I extend it, and you can see create asset menu again here. That allows me to define the creation of that asset directly in the Unity editor, and all the properties, you know, the various images, and just now I described that how many crystals I can have in my inventory. These are just serialized field, and that mana color itself does not have any behavior. It just gives me access to all the various properties in some utility functions. Now the mana data itself, which represents the value here, which is the combination of the color plus the form, is using system.serializable. So it's a serializable class which has the two fields I require, which is the color and the form. Again, this is just a bunch of public accessors for these various properties, and then the localized, non-localized description for that object, which I will have to localize later. So the gain mana effect class just extends the effect data class, right, and finalizes it and provides the serialized field for the mana data that I just return when it's requested. And you can see here, I actually implement this interface called iGainMana effect, and I click into it. And it just gives me a mana when I request one. And the way it's used in the game, if I look real quick, actually my battle system just checks. If we go through, the game has this system where I can undo anything that the user does. And so the way it works is I will combine all of these effects that the user does into a kind of a list, and then I will flatten the whole thing and then go through each of the effects that the user has applied and chain them together and then check the type of effect to see what that triggers. So in that case, if the effect is create a mana, it will just create a new mana object into the game. Right, so this is the most simple kind of effects you can find. There are a bunch of others like creating wounds, creating effect spawners and stuff like this I won't go into today. All right, so the general idea here is in code you define the behavior of your scriptable objects, or you define the contract. So that's what the interface is for, the contract that the scriptable object has to fulfill. And then in your systems for your game, so in my case it will be the battle system, I'm checking the type of each of these effects, and then so that tells me what contract they should follow and apply them whenever the situation matters for it. So I won't get attacked in the blocking phase, for instance. It would not make sense. So all the effects that do not implement the gain attack effect would be ignored during the blocking phase. And inversely, all the blocking effects would be ignored during the attack phase because they are not useful. Unless you have some conversion going on where you can convert a block into an attack and stuff like that, but this is a topic for another time. Alright, so let me know what you think, and if you would like different topics around scriptable objects or other game programming related topics, I would be happy to make a video on it. Thank you, and see you in the next video.